Good evening. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2024, and the time now is almost 6. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. All right. Good evening. Once again, today is Monday, February 12th, 2024, and the time now is 6 p.m. and I will call to order the regular meeting of Town of Mead Board of Trustees. In accordance with the town's remote participation and remote meeting policy adopted by the Board of Trustees on March 13th, 2023 by resolution number 21-R-2023, remote participation will be allowed. The meeting link has been provided on the town's website and designated a posting place 24 hours prior to the meeting. I'd like to remind everyone present, both in person and virtually, of the town's general guidelines for public comment at open meetings. The guidelines are available online and on the entry table. There are 2 public comment opportunities on the agenda for persons in attendance at the town hall to address the board. The first public comment opportunity is limited to items on the agenda. The second public comment opportunity allows any subject, whether it is on the agenda or not. Mary, please, roll call, please.
Mayor Whitlow.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Here.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Broadhead. Trustee Harris. Here. Trustee Parr.
Here.
Trustee Schranz.
Here.
Mayor Whitlow, today is Monday, February 12th, 2024, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mary. Please join me in a moment of silence in recognition of our school resource officers who keep our children safe. Thank you very much for your time. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As is.
I will move to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
I apologize. We have that thing going on with our cameras today. Trustee Parr.
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Yes.
Trustee Schranz.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you very much. Motion carries. We have an agenda for this evening. Next is our staff report by our town manager. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. You have my report. I did want to point out a couple things. We have been getting responses to the police survey. I hope all of you have taken it and your family members. I think we're at about 75 responses. We really like to see those numbers go up, so please encourage your friends, neighbors, family. We will be sending a postcard out. So, and that probably will spur more people taking it. But I just think it's important that, people weigh in. Also, in my report, you see we have 2 trial dates scheduled. We had one today, and then we have one, I think, March 11th. Just FYI, we have a lot more activity. We tend to have more people at court. And just to check in on the room, from everything that I hear, people feel much better in this room than when we had it before. So I just think it's important to know the investment that was made in this is really bearing fruit in a lot of our trials that we're having. I also did want to mention, I know I sent you all an email and you probably saw in the paper that Lean Tree is moving here. 75 years they were in Boulder County in Gun Barrel. And I know we'll be meeting with their CEO next week. And I know it will take this year to get the building ready, but large facility, we'll find out. We're all hoping that they'll have like a small retail store associated with it. So, pretty exciting news for Mead, I think. And other than that, that's everything else is in my report. Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments for Helen? I just have a question. How long will the survey be open for the police survey?
So for the moment, it's going through the end of February, correct? The 19th, and then we will assess. We do have the ability to extend it by a week if we feel that we want to see if we can get some more responses. It's really important, for the community to weigh in.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your report. Okay, we'll move on to our first informational item of the evening will be a police update, and our Commander Smith will be introducing our guests tonight. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I also know you're going to do a proclamation for our school resource officers, so a shout out to them because they obviously deal with the day-to-day issues. But last week, Officer Salazar was able to go to the high school, some of the sports events, some of the more of the fun side of that job where they can be present and support our students. And then today, Officer Barker got to read a story to the kindergarten class today. So those are the kind of the fun things that sometimes go unnoticed. But what I'm here tonight is I want to introduce to you our victim services. And we're grateful that we've had a great partnership regionally with Carbon Valley and Mead. And through that, the victims that we have in our community have been able to get a lot of resources that otherwise we would not be able to tap into. And we're very appreciative that we have Alexis and Madison here. Alexis started this from the ground up. It was nothing before. And so the credit is truly to these two ladies here. And I will turn it over to Alexis and Madison to provide an update of some of the exceptional work that's being done.
Good evening. So I'm Alexis Gutierrez. I'm the Victim Services Coordinator.
And I'm Madison Bergman. I'm the Outreach Victim Advocate.
Thank you so much. We mostly just wanted to let you guys know what we do as victim advocates. So as of November, we are available 24/7 for on-scene crisis response. Initially, we were only going out to major incidents due to it only being me. And I was also pregnant at the time, so it was a little tough to do it all on my own. But now that we have the 2 of us and 5 volunteers, we are 100% on call. So any jurisdiction that we cover can call us if a victim or a person suffering a personal tragedy needs support. Last year, we were able to serve 233 victims of crime overall, and 113 people dealing with personal tragedy, whether that be an unattended death, a fire, a car accident. And then in Mead specifically, we served 44 victims of crime and 50 people that were suffering personal tragedy. So a total of 94 individuals here for Mead. The top 2 things that we were working on here in Mead was domestic violence and sex crimes against children. So those are the 2 main crime victims that we're serving here in the area. And just some accomplishments from the last year, we did receive a grant that brought Madison to us. So that covered her salary in full, and then the 4 towns are dividing her benefits by 4. We also received a JAG grant to help out with my salary and benefits, as well as the software that we use to track all the contacts that we have. And then we also received a VAIL grant to help out as well with my salary and with printing costs, so that we're able to get victim rights brochures and resource information out to victims of crime. I think that's all I've got. Madison actually presented a webinar for the Justice Clearinghouse, so a national webinar. I think over 200 people attended that, and she talked about the good work we're doing out here and what we did to build this program. We've also been invited to speak at 2 other conferences. So Chief Newbanks might actually be speaking for us at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference in Boston later this year. And I'm possibly going to Vegas for the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executive Conference to talk about our work as well. Any questions for us? Anything you'd like to know about our program?
I just want to say thank you for coming, and kudos to you
Happy to
too
be
for
here. Thank
being here,
you.
and
Thank
so
you.
apologize to the cameras because we're still working these things out. Trustee Schrantz.
I have just a really basic question.
Uh-huh.
How are you dispatched?
Through dispatch. So the officer radios dispatch.
Okay,
Let
so
them.
it's the police who will respond to the call.
Yes.
They determine that having you on site is the right thing.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, that's it.
Yes.
Thank you.
No worries. And people can also call our victim services number directly. That would be more for follow-up support versus in the moment.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so
We
much for
appreciate your
having us.
time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Commander, for bringing them on tonight. All right, next is our community update, our community center update by our town engineer, public works director, Erica Rasmussen. Ma'am, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you. I've got a presentation that I think Danelle's pulling up here. We're going to talk a little bit about the community center and the downtown improvements that are coming up. I'm going to start us off, and then Lorelai's got a few slides at the end here as well. All right, so you'll recall our facility is an 11,000 square foot facility. We started with a much larger wish list that was quite a bit bigger footprint than this, but we've narrowed it down to really what we feel is the bare minimum basic services that we absolutely had to have in this building. And that is the full-size cross-court gym, the multi-purpose room, a kitchenette. We have 2 offices and some rec equipment storage there. We are repurposing some of the historical materials that were salvaged from the bean plant. We're utilizing some of the steel components. A lot of the steel is more decorative and being used from a historical perspective to just point out types of equipment that was used in the bean plant. We're repurposing some structural timbers, that really nice large timbers from the inside of the building that are going to be used as around posts, for example, that are holding up a roof overhang that's over the patio. We've got sample of the stacked panel plank that, as you remember, was sort of unique construction where the 2x4s were just stacked on top of each other. And so we salvaged portions of that, and we'll be repurposing that inside. And then I think there were about 30 of those large metal bean bins, and we're going to use several of those on site from in the landscaping. Here's the floor plan. I'm seeing now this might be sort of difficult to for you to see, but I did color it up to try to make it easy. So we've got, of course, the big giant blue square is the court itself. The pink area in the upper right is the community room that could be utilized for meeting space or classes or other programming. The green is the kitchenette. The purple, there's 2 purple squares there, which is the office, and that more darker red color is the common space. So the vestibule, the lobby, the reception desk, and the corridor. In yellow, we've got the restrooms. There are 4 restrooms inside, and they're all just individual, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-gender specific restrooms. So there's 4 on the inside, there's 2 on the outside that would be utilized for the splash pad area. And then that orange space sort of on the lower right, those are all storage areas, IT, janitor's closet, pump room for the splash pad and those kinds of things. Here's our site plan. So in blue, we've got 2 parking areas. The yellow in the lower left, that's the property we're acquiring from the railroad. That'll be the detention pond or one of the detention ponds. The purple is the alley paving adjacent to the building. And then, of course, the building right there and sort of that, I think it's green. And orange in the lower right would be the splash pad location. Those downtown alley improvements, like I mentioned, will include some parking. We'll have EV charging stations and a couple of the spaces there. Of course, paving the 2 legs of that alley, sidewalks, and we'll be undergrounding the overhead power along the alleys. Little summary of our project timeline. We've submitted the building plans to Safe Build. Those went in on February 6th. We're looking to release our bid documents around February 20. That'll go out to contractors, and that'll be sort of on a parallel path while we finalize our approval through the planning department. We're anticipating a March 20 presentation to the Planning Commission. March 25 would be the approval of the final plat presentation to this board, and April 8th, the site plan. Actually, I think I might have those backwards, the site plan. Does the site plan come first, Jason?
Preliminary.
Okay, sorry, preliminary plat first, then the site plan and final plat. And then hopefully all of those things happen as planned, and we'll be getting our building permit and awarding that contract and starting construction about May or June. All right, just a reminder of how we're funding this project. We have really two sort of separate projects, right? We've got the building and then we have the transportation component. So the building funding sources, $1 million from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We have a $1.5 million grant from DOLA, and 6.8 million is coming from the Municipal Facility Impact Fund. The alley funding sources is $750,000 from the Transportation Impact Fund and $500,000 from MURA that was transferred into that transportation fund. All right, I'm going to have Lorelei come up and give you a little rundown on the building.
Thank you. I'm just going to briefly touch on preliminary facility operations and programming. So right now we have tentatively are looking at hours of operation being Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then on Sunday from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. That's pretty typical of community centers to have shortened hours on Sundays. Our fees. There will be fees for the facility. It's been a question from quite a few residents. So what we're looking at is drop-in fees, rental fees, similar to how we rented this room out as the community room. Those fees will be in line with that. And then programming fees. We do programming fees now for all of our programs, sports, events that we do. And so that will be the same at the community center. The drop-in fees typically are a couple dollars, $3 to $5, depending on where you're at, to go in and use the facility if you want to play basketball for an hour or two or play volleyball for an hour or two. That's what we're looking at to try to get some cost recovery on that. And so for programming, how we have it set up now for 2023, all of our youth and adult programs were at 115% cost recovery. So we'd like to keep that the same, meaning we're expending money and we have about 15% in revenue to cover those costs. As for seniors, that's where it's a little bit different. For all of our older active programming that we do, it's about a 4% cost recovery. And the reason behind that is we want to keep it affordable to our older active adults and get those folks engaged. So that's why we believe that it's an acceptable lack of revenue for that specific age group. The other thing to consider is for all of our programming, we have resident fees and non-resident fees, and that's applied across the board except for our older active adults. We don't apply non-resident fees to those folks because it is a diverse group. About half of them are not Mead residents, that we don't want to impact them and limit our programming with that age group. So as far as capacity, one thing I'd like to point out for the multi-purpose room, with tables and chairs, full capacity, you're looking at about 56 people in there. And it's significantly larger than what we had, or significantly smaller than what we had before. So standing room is about 110. While it is smaller than what we had hoped it would be, it's definitely usable space and will be programmed to the fullest extent. And then I'd also want to remind you that this facility will be used as a resiliency hub. That was part of our grant, was to be able to use this facility for an emergency shelter or emergency communications, disaster assistance, a focal point in town that the community knows they can come to for assistance, should that be the case. So when we're looking at programming, our objective here is to maximize the use of the community center, providing space for additional programming, services, educational classes to really serve the diverse needs and to make sure that we are serving the entire community. We're not looking at this as a recreation center. We're not looking at this as a senior center. This is a community center, and we're trying to figure out how to best meet the needs for everybody. We have people reaching out consistently, usually on a weekly basis, between myself and Caitlin, kind of throwing ideas out there, asking questions about what we're planning on doing, if we would consider looking at this. And our answer to that is yes, we are considering everything. We want to be able to provide the most services that we can for the people of Mead. So we're talking, arts, theater, music. Last week, I had a person reach out wanting to know if we'd consider a community choir program. And those are things that we want to do. As far as our current programming, we are planning to keep everything in place as is. And I'll give you an example. So Girls on the Run, we ran that program last year. We're going to run it twice this year. Had a really good turnout last fall, so we're excited to bring it back. Typically, that program is an indoor-outdoor program. We got a waiver from Girls on the Run to run it outside. It worked really well, and that's where we're planning on keeping it. Youth sports is kind of in the same boat. We have tons of kids registered for sports, and this facility cannot house all of the practices and games. So we will still be using St. Vrain, Mead Middle School and Mead Elementary School to run practices, run games. What the community center means to this is that when the middle school cancels 5 out of 10 of our coaches' practices, we have a spot for them. We have an alternative place, and that's really exciting for us because we've kind of been our hands have been tied with space. So this is a good opportunity to be able to have backup plans in place. We also plan to keep senior lunch, senior bingo, and exercise where they're currently at. So senior bingo, older active adult lunch bunch and bingo is at the Merc. They have a great room upstairs. They serve the food there. So logistically, it doesn't make sense to move it and have to figure out food and transport it. Same thing with senior exercise. Our functional fitness class is over at Anytime Fitness. They're set up for fitness. They've seen their numbers double by moving it over there, and it's a great space, and we'll continue to utilize that space. Just being able to provide more opportunities for other different kinds of programming. What we're looking at in the future, some of the things that folks have brought to us, Silver Sneakers. So that was one that Anytime Fitness actually lists as being a host for Silver Sneakers, but they don't actually run it. So that's something that we're looking to bring over and be able to facilitate in our gym space. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has reached out to us about doing hunter safety. It's something they used to do here and they would like to resume. And we're talking, education classes like disaster preparation and building family kits, emergency car kits. I had a gentleman reach out wanting to do jam sessions, and get a bunch of musically talented people in a room and just start playing music. I mentioned the community choir, but we've also talked to folks about game nights. not video games, but like, you know, old school board games, card games. Just alternative programming where we can get the most folks in doing fun things. So that's my spiel. You have any questions for Erica and I?
Thanks, Lorelei. Questions? Tricia.
So on the thing, Erica, that you had up there for the timeline of stuff, you had February 20th, that the planning commission would be seeing the plans, but in Helen's notes, you said the planning commission meeting in February was canceled.
It was March 20 is the planning commission.
Oh, okay. I saw that wrong. I saw the February and, okay, I just wanted to make sure on that. And then the sewer hookup to the Mead Town Center, is that on track to get done before we commence anything?
So it is, they haven't received their final permit, although however, they have paid for and we've executed the easement. So the sand is going through the hourglass, as you will recall.
Right.
We did offer to give them back some of their money if they reach that milestone. They are working with Robin to get the documents done. They are actively working on the building. So they, according to the email I got today, they aren't going to pour the concrete on the front walk until probably till the weather's reliably warm, and they want to do all that work at one time. So it's more of a staging thing, but they're keenly aware of the witching hour because I had a long discussion with them about it a couple weeks ago. So,
David.
Question on staffing for the facility. How's that? You guys have any idea of how that may be working or what the plan is for that?
slave labor is what we're looking at. No, that's the first time I saw the hours. That's the first time I saw the hours. I know we'll have to be doing some more staffing to accommodate that many hours that it's open. Now, bear in mind, this facility won't be ready to go in 24. So when we come for our budget at the end of this year, you'll see an increase, which is one of the reasons why Lorelei is talking about the recapture of some of the expenses. Particularly, I think we're more worried about the ongoing expenses and recovering that than we are any kind of capital recovery. But between the utilities in the building and then the staffing, which will be another big ticket item. I mean, I don't know. We've talked about it, but we haven't specifically laid it out. But that's like, you see those offices on the plan, they're basically like putting 3 or 4 people together in little cubicles I guess they're laying out their strategy. And then it's not like we have ample offices where all these people are sitting around clicking away on their computers. So I did want to mention one thing, just in case, there's a misconception. This could function as an emergency operations center. So if there were something, it would be a meeting space. We could have like the multi-purpose room, but it wouldn't be a shelter. A couple years ago, when they had the Marshall fire, and they started looking around and looking for potential shelters, one of the requirements is a shower. There has to be showers, and this facility will not have showers, correct? And the reason why I bring that up is I just don't want there to be any misconception that it's potentially a place that would house people for a period of time, because they do have that limitation. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, because we wanted to do this today to kind of talk about what the facility is, but also what it isn't. And as Lorelei pointed out, it isn't a rec center. It's a community center. It's not a place to house people for long periods of time. It's really to house them between 7 and 9, for activities. So.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lorelei. Thank you, Erica, very much. Okay, next move on to our proclamations tonight. The first one is our National School Resource Officer Appreciation Day, which is this Thursday, February 15th. And I've asked Trustee Adams to read the proclamation.
School Resource Officer Appreciation Day, February 15th, 2024. Whereas National Association of School Resource Officers is dedicated to making schools and children safer by providing quality training of school-based law enforcement
officers. Whereas school resource officers bridge the gap between youth and law enforcement and embrace the triad concept of school policing, serving in informal counseling, education, and law enforcement roles to support students and the communities that they serve. Whereas by training law enforcement officers to counsel, educate, and protect school communities, the men and women of the NASRO continuously lead by example and promote a positive image of law enforcement to school children and school communities. Whereas school resource officers are valuable and essential members of the educational community and deserve unwavering respect and support from the communities they serve in the pursuit of keeping schools and students safe. Now therefore, I, Colleen Whitlow, Mayor, do hereby designate February 15th, 2024 as National School Resource Officer Appreciation Day.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the signing of this proclamation?
I motion to approve.
I'll second, but the initials in the very first whereas are incorrect. It should be corrected before we,
Oh, yep, NARSO.
it should be NASRO.
Good catch.
So with that change, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Shranz,
Yes.
trustee Parr,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
trustee Adams,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes, thank you very much. The motion carries. Next is our proclamation for Colorado Engineers Week, February 18th through the 24th, 2024. I've asked trustee Schrantz to read the proclamation. Sir?
Thank you. Proclamation, Colorado Engineers Week, February 18th through the 24th. Whereas engineers use their scientific and technical skills in creative and revolutionary ways to fulfill society's needs, and whereas engineers work on many major technological challenges of our time, such as rebuilding towns devastated by natural disaster, cleaning up the environment, assuring safe, clean, and efficient sources of energy, and designing information systems that will propel our state and country into the future. And whereas engineers are encouraging young math and science students to recognize the practical applications of their knowledge. And whereas the American Council of Engineering Companies encourages and inspires young people to pursue careers in engineering, because as we face the challenges of the 21st century, skilled engineers will be vital to our future. Now, therefore, I, Colleen Whitlow, Mayor, do hereby designate the week of February 18th through 24th, 2024 as Colorado Engineers Week, given under her hand and seal of the town of Mead, Colorado on this 12th day of February, 2024.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the signing of this proclamation?
I move that we sign this proclamation.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
trustee Broadhead. Oh, sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Yes.
Trustee Shranz.
Yes.
Trustee Parr.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much for both our trustees reading the proclamations. We do have cake to celebrate our engineers. Please stay after the meeting and have a piece of cake with us. All right. Next is our public comment. The board welcomes public comment for any item on the agenda at this time. We will take comments about items not on the agenda during the second public comment, number 10. The board will listen to your comments and take them into consideration. If you desire conversation, please email the board or the town manager or attend monthly coffee with the mayor. If you wish to speak during the public comment period, please adhere to the town's general guidelines. Please start by stating your full name and address for the record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the Board of Trustees. If you are representing a group, you will have 5 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in the first public comment period about an agenda item? Please come to the board. Please come to state your full name and address for the record.
Is this on? Good to go?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I'm Jean Bratcher. I live at 3465 Elderberry Lane. And I'm here this evening to request the town reconsider a bit of the design for the community center multipurpose room so that it has more functionality and can better serve all the residents of Mead. Hopefully I didn't miss the boat, seeing that the plan just went through, but I recently just learned about this limitation. So although we know that having a dedicated senior center is out of the question, it would mean a lot to the senior citizens to have the community center be a venue for the regularly scheduled Weld County Friendly Forks lunches. My understanding is that due to Weld County Health Department guidelines for food service, it would have to meet three requirements for the program: a dishwasher or 3-section sink, a hand washing only sink, and an indirect drain. I exchanged emails with Lorelei not too long ago, and she said that these were all part of the initial design, but because of the budget, everything had to shrink, and I guess the sink part of it got done away with or whatever. So to my thinking, it would make more sense to perhaps reduce the lobby, the office, or the storage space rather than limit the ability of the building to serve more community uses that might need food service, such as having a catered meal when renting the room. The 3-section and hand washing sinks surely should not take up that much more space. The Friendly Fork lunches are a really big deal, serving about 30 to 40 people each week. They not only provide nutritious meals, they also offer very beneficial social interaction and a sense of community for a vulnerable demographic. Not to mention the opportunity for outreach by guest speakers such as the Mead Police Department and the staff who went there just this week or last week, and the fire department who does their blood pressure checks. While it's great that the town has budgeted paying the rent now at its current location, the church, if the church sells the property or otherwise can't offer the venue, there's not another local option. I heard Mead is the only Friendly Fork location that has this type of tenuous arrangement. The fact that not every attendee at the Friendly Fork lunch is not a Mead resident I heard that was a complaint. It misses the point of the county provided program. And that'd be like saying Mead residents shouldn't be allowed to participate in the lunches at Firestone or Platteville. We don't restrict the other town-sponsored events, so this should be no different. So now's the time to adjust the design before the ground is even broken. So thank you for reconsidering making the new community center the venue for a very important program serving the needs of Mead seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else that would like to speak to the board tonight on an agenda item? Mr. Smith?
Don Smith, 325 Main Street. As far as the sinks that she's talking about, I did a brief look on material costs and whatnot, and we're looking anywhere from $540 to $1,200 for material. If we look at the high end, we're looking at $1,200 for the sinks. I didn't include a dishwasher. I just sort of heard that in the conversation. But we might be talking about $1,600 as far as material goes. The layout, I did not see the layout until just now, but if we share a wall on the plumbing, we're not adding that much to the cost here for something that can be used for more than just the senior citizen meetings she's talking about. And at this point here, a town that's about to go to 3 times what it's supposed to be currently at 5,500, seems to me like we should adjust this right now. The other aspect too that's been talked about is pickleball. And there's been no talk. I just heard volleyball in there. Pickleball courts are very similar to volleyball courts. All it is a mount in the floor, in the hardwood floor, and you put up a net just like a tennis court. So to do something like this in there and do pickleball in there during the cold weather, and there's seniors that use the courts out here, it's really a cost-effective thing to do at this point, especially just mortising some of these mounts in the floor. So both these objects we're talking about at this point, where it's still just being drawn, apparently it's in the preliminaries here, it's really cost effective to adjust all these things at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, very much for your comments today. And thank you, Jean, for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda contains items which are considered routine and are approved with one motion and vote. Is there a motion to approve approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
A second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Trustee Schranz.
Yes.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you very much. Motion carries. Thank you, staff, for putting the consent agenda in front of us today. Next is our second public comment of the evening. We have no further general business, so this brings us to, again, number 10 for public comment. This comment period is for any item, whether it is on the agenda or not. All the other guidelines previously stated apply to this agenda item. Would anyone like to comment on this time during this public comment period, which brings us to whether the item that you need to speak or want to speak about is on the agenda or not? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our legislative update by our town attorney. Sir, you have the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Whitlow, members of the Board of Trustees. I do understand that there's cake to celebrate Engineers Week, so I will try to make this brief. But as I mentioned at the last session, the legislature did convene on Wednesday, January 10th. So at this point, they're a little over a month into the 120-day legislative session. Per a call that I was on Thursday of last week, things are starting to heat up a little bit. There have been about 200 bills that have been introduced thus far, with a lot of bills expected to be dropped or introduced this week. As I've mentioned previously, the governor's office, the primary legislative focus for the governor's office this year is the strategic growth bill, the accessory dwelling unit bill, and the transit-oriented communities, or what's referred to as the TOC bill. Housing affordability plays into, I think, all of that and remains a top priority or concern this session. Though there are differing opinions about how best to address the issue. Some lawmakers place the focus on making housing less expensive with a policy goal of preventing displacement and keeping individuals in their homes. And other legislators have placed the focus on removing barriers to development with a policy goal of creating more housing supply. So on the housing supply side of the equation, there are a number of bills, some of which I've mentioned previously, but I'll mention again briefly for you. One is the ADU, or the accessory dwelling unit bill. That has been introduced but not yet heard in committee. This bill would ensure that ADUs are permitted as a use by right, where single unit detached dwellings are allowed for jurisdictions that are within a metropolitan planning organization and have a population of 1,000 or more. On the supply side of the equation, there is also House Bill 1107. This is one that I mentioned at the last regular meeting. This would be the bill that creates a disincentive for frivolous zoning appeals or 106 actions, and would award attorneys' fees to successful defendants. And there is also legislation that will be focused on enacting reforms to Colorado's construction defect statute in order to reinvigorate new condominium development or for sale or for owner-occupied multifamily development. And per the Colorado Municipal League, this is but one of a multiple bills that will be introduced to try to reform the state's construction defect statute. In terms of furthering the policy goal of preventing displacement and keeping individuals in their existing homes, meaning ensuring that existing homes remain affordable, one of the key pieces of legislation that I mentioned at the last meeting that was introduced by Senator Rod Bockenfeld from Arapahoe County was going to be the bill that would have required local governments to reauthorize the detabering, any prior detabering election that had been approved by the electorate no later than the 2029 calendar year, and then every 5 years thereafter, meaning that governments could not have kind of a perpetual exemption from the budgetary requirements that are set forth in Tabor. My understanding from the call that I was on at the end of last week is that bill was assigned to the the House State Civic Military Veterans Affairs Committee, and that was postponed indefinitely, which likely means that that specific piece of legislation is dead, at least for this session. And then moving on, another, I think, key legislative focus in terms of ensuring housing affordability will really ultimately come out of the property tax commission that was created by the legislature during the special session that was held at the end of last year. The Property Tax Commission is required to make its recommendations to the General Assembly by March 15th, which is a little over a month from today, in order to give the legislature ample time to consider one or more ballot measures that would have to potentially be certified to the Colorado voters this coming November. Complicating the committee's work on how best to reform the property tax system in Colorado, we have Initiative 50, which some of you may have heard of. This was a citizen-initiated petition that has already qualified for the November 2024 ballot and would limit property tax revenues to 4% over the prior year absent voter approval. There's also Initiative 95, which has received a ballot title, but has yet to be circulated for signatures and therefore has not yet qualified for the November 2024 election. And that actually takes the opposite approach and would require local voter approval to impose any limit on property tax revenue. Other measures that are under consideration by the committee and ultimately the General Assembly include lowering the assessment rates on the different classes of property. So as you know, in Colorado, residential property is assessed at a different rate than commercial and vice versa. So there would be some work on lowering those assessment rates. The commission is also looking at potentially capping the amount that a property's valuation for assessment purposes may increase year over year. So I do think that property tax reform will likely be one of the key challenges of this upcoming legislative session. So I think that the reason I think that that's going to be challenging is that the commission has two main purposes, right? They're going to have to ensure that property owners are shielded from the types of historic property tax increases that we've seen during this most recent assessment cycle. I think most people are dealing with a 25%, 30%, 40% increase in the assessed value of their property. So the commission has that to take into account. They also have to find a solution that will ensure that all of the important public services like fire protection, police services, local government services, school, education funding remain in place as well. So they definitely have their work cut out for them. And they have to figure all of this out by May 8th, because that's when this session is scheduled to end. So quickly, just to follow up on a couple of things that I mentioned at the last meeting, the Transit-Oriented Communities Bill, or the TOC legislation, that is still expected soon, but it's my understanding that has not yet formally been introduced. The CML legislation, the affordable housing legislation, I think I mentioned at the last meeting that CML was going to work with Senator Roberts to combine Senator Roberts' bills, but it's my understanding now that the CML legislation is viewed by a lot of stakeholders as in many ways superior or very well written, and that bill may end up supplanting or kind of subsuming Senator Roberts' bill. There will also be a large liquor omnibus bill, or and Mary, you may have heard about that through the clerk's listserv, but there was a study committee that is recommending a lot of changes to the way that liquor permitting occurs in jurisdictions. And I think that has a broad base of support, so that liquor omnibus bill will be proceeding. There will also be a lot of bills coming out of the Sales and Use Tax Simplification Task Force. And then this is for Trustee Parr. I know you mentioned at the last meeting, you had a question on that Senate Bill 24005, which is the bill concerning the conservation of water in the state through the prohibition of certain landscaping practices. Again, this is the bill that would prohibit local governments or common interest communities, HOAs, from allowing the installation or placement of non-functional turf So that has, I don't really have much update other than to say that it's been assigned to committee, and that's continuing to be looked at. There's also one, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but there's a bill that has been introduced that deals with parking minimums, and this bill would essentially allow housing developers to determine how much housing or how much parking they need for a development. And it would prohibit any municipality within an MPO from enforcing minimum parking requirements. So obviously, this is a bill that CML has is going to oppose because it's a bill that is targeting, taking away local land use control from jurisdictions. But that's what I have for tonight. Again, it's very early in the session, but there's a lot going on. And as I mentioned, CML is expecting a lot of bills to still be introduced in the coming weeks. So I should have further updates as we work our way through the session. So happy to stand for any questions.
Questions, comments for?
If you could keep an eye on House Bill 24-1174, the Safer Spaces bill that's being pushed through or attempted to be pushed through.
What number?
It's HB, it's 24-1174.
Okay.
Well, they're calling it the Safer Spaces legislation, but essentially it eliminates people from being able to have concealed or open carry guns in basically anywhere. Even the officers would not be allowed to carry in this room because they're on government property. It's extreme to the far side that it's basically preventing anyone from being able to protect themselves.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one yet, or I haven't seen it summarized by CML, but I'll keep my eyes out for that one. Sure.
Please, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, could I just wanted to throw one more thing in.
Sure.
That's somewhat of a corollary to what's going on the State House. We haven't heard any more on the potential for a sales tax increase for transit. I know we brought this up 2 weeks ago at the Quarter Coalition meeting. Those transit folks weren't there, but there's chatter that they may do as much as a 1-cent state sales tax ballot initiative this fall for transit. I think there's some concern that there isn't enough support. So one of the things they want to do is see what kind of support is out there. But that's just another one of the things that's kind of milling around in the background. From what I understand, it wouldn't include general transportation, which, as you well know, we hear it all the time. There's, the sales tax on gas hasn't been increased since 1996 when Bill Clinton was president. And so the state we have no extra sales tax for gas. So just something to keep in the back or the front of your mind as we go along. If I hear more, I'll let you know. But, it's getting close to March. You have to have a game plan within another month if you're going to launch something like that. So I'd be surprised if they went forward with it.
Thanks, Helen. All right. Hey, thanks, Marcus, for all the good news. All right. Next, we'll move on to elected official reports. Do any of the town trustees have any reports they would like to bring up? Tricia, go ahead.
I don't have a report, but I have something I've been thinking about since it was brought up. Lorelei, can you come up here? I'm not trying to pick on you. I just want to say, I actually been thinking about his idea about pickleball courts, and it is becoming a very popular sport among older people. And in my opinion, it's an excellent idea because during the winter months, when the kids are all in school, you're not going to have kids in there coming to pay to play pickup basketball. But what you could have is a whole lot of older adults coming in to play pickleball. That would be great income. That would be a great way to offset some of our costs because you're not going to have kids. But older people who can't go out and play pickleball outside when it's in the middle of the winter, that could be a really good source for a I think, very small amount of increase in what we've got planned. I really like that idea a lot.
So pickleball is on our list of possible programming. When we were going through the design phase, because of the courts, and you have one large regular court that's lined for basketball and volleyball. And then you have the cross courts that are doubly lined for volleyball and basketball. It is a line mess. We had pickleball lines on there and took them off. So it was a little bit more digestible on what lines were what. But that's not to say we couldn't do pickleball in there.
I'm sitting here thinking about, oh my gosh, that'd be perfect in the mornings for older people that's when you're gonna get them in to do something like that sport. And
It's not just older people. When I was in Vegas, my son and his girlfriend won a pickleball tournament.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely becoming a very popular
Yeah.
sport in general, but and it's kind of started with the older people. And then, and I don't know, I'm sure that you've been back and forth with Jean and kind of know the logistics of things, but I mean, if we can accommodate that and it's not a big increase, I don't know why we don't. So just wanted to throw that out there, but I don't know if that's accommodatable or not, but that would be nice to have that as an option.
We aren't trying to block anything. As we went through the design, we had to pare it down. We had to pare down every space to maximize the gym space. So unfortunately, the kitchenette doesn't have the room. It's not the cost of the sink. It's more the configuration. But I think, first of all, we have a solid plan for senior lunch at this time. One thing that we would like to look at is potentially maybe if they could do senior lunch a little more like it was during COVID, where the lunches were brought and didn't require the preparation or the washing. I mean, it's not like the room couldn't accommodate it. It's the kitchen space. But we'll continue to work with the community to try to identify ways to do it. I would say one thing that I heard, I don't think the Catholic Church is going anywhere. It's been there for many, many years, and it will continue to be there. And it's a fantastic facility that can accommodate a lot of growth in our older adult population, as well as have proximate parking to the facility. One of the things about our facility, we won't have any more than the minimum handicap spaces unless the state tells us we can't have any parking requirements, but that's one of the limitations of the building. We'll absolutely continue to work with our the entire community to try to get the most, but we can't make any promises. And unless the board wants us to stop this from going out to bid on the 20th and pull the plans back, it would be a relatively substantial change when I think we can work with a footprint to come up with solutions. Exactly. And we could do temporary lining for that as well. So we'll work on it. I mean, we want everybody to use this facility the best that it can serve everybody.
Yeah, I would like to add about the room size. So I don't know if y'all have been over to senior lunch. I've been there a couple times. So that room is really large. It's bigger than the multi-purpose room that we will have. So what I'm hearing from senior lunch participants is that group has grown. I mean, when they were here in the community room, prior to COVID, it was 20 people. Now, we're looking at 30 to 40. If that growth continues, that room will not accommodate.
Okay, anything? Okay, thanks, Lorelai. Any other trustees have anything? Okay, great. Okay, Thursday is legislation workshop. I'm not sure how many people are signed up, but I'll be there all day listening to that stuff. And then, of course, the next day is public policy for CML for that Friday. So we have a busy week coming up. But that's all. I just want to make sure that everybody, I thank the staff and I thank the participants that are here tonight for coming. And I thank the board for being here tonight, and our best to Deb getting better. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Adams,
Yes.
trustee Strands, trustee Parr,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you. The February 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is now adjourned at 6:59. Thank you. Please go home safely. Oh, and before you go, have a piece of cake.